Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is the weekly roundtable, and I've got a little bit of feedback on my microphone, so please bear with me on that. But I think I'm the only one in at the moment. Frank is somewhere. Mike Marshall should be joining us once he gets back from work, and I think Dow Grimm should be joining us shortly too. If you notice, it looks a little different. I'm on my cell phone, and that's because my main computer crashed. Windows 11, completely unstable, it's unreliable, and it absolutely devastated me. And so, therefore, my main computer crashed, and I'm using my cell phone, as a backup. There is Frank Johnson with the Liberty First Foundation. Hi, Frank.
And hey, good evening. Thanks for stepping up and starting the show for me. I had to run one final errand before I managed to sit back down and say hello to everybody. So, what's new? What's interesting?
So it sounds like there's echoes. That's probably because I'm on my headset. I will try and take care of that. I'm still trying to recover from my birthday, where I did a live stream for 12 hours and 21 minutes. And then, oh God. And then we've had the week with tariffs. So it's been kind of crazy. Hang on, I'm going to try and fix my audio here.
All right. Well, he's muted, so that's partially fixed. Hey, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, thanks for joining us in there this week. It's been a little bit of a strange week as far as the news is concerned. We're going to get to covering some of that. Want to wait for Vass to come back in. Mike Marshall is still on his way to his computer from his job in an undisclosed location in upstate New York. Val is well, we don't know where he is at the moment right now. But how's your audio now sounding, Mike?
I'm not sure. You tell me. How's it sound? Do you hear echo?
You got a little delay, but not that much echo, so you're all right.
I'll live with the delay. I can't do anything about the echo. Again, I'm on a cell phone because my computer's dead. Because Windows 11 sucks. Killed my computer.
Well, nothing will solve problems on the computer quite like an upgrade.
It's unnecessary. I had to get it because it wouldn't let me do video editing. And thank you, Microsoft. They upgraded, so I couldn't do the video editing. Thus, here we are. But let's move forward to that. There's all kinds of things. First of all, I want to say thank you for showing up on my birthday live stream. For those who are unaware, every Sunday for the last 8 years, I do a live stream. And on my birthday every year, I spend about 12 hours, sometimes longer, talking to the public about everything and anything, especially politics, of course, but, sci-fi movies, whatever people want to talk about. And during that conversation, Frank came on at one point and wished me a happy birthday, was talking a little bit about gun care, gun safety. He was speaking with Peace Logic, who's in the comments right now, and having a conversation for the public about, what you can do to make yourself safe, to be secure in that safety, and wishing me a happy birthday. And I appreciate the time you spent with me.
It's funny. I signed on to just pop in for a few minutes just to say hello. And, usually when I stop in on a show, I usually have a little bit of a grasp of what's going on as far as the show is concerned. And I happen to stop on while you were in the middle of speaking about video games and movies. Mm-hmm. And those are two. Now, movies, I know. Not so much about video games. But when you combine movies that are based on video games, I know absolutely nothing. Other than maybe the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, or something to that effect. That's about, well, maybe Transformers. Uh, but what what was this game
Frank,
that this movie's
Frank,
based on?
Frank, you are about 25 to 35 years out of touch with the rest of the public. It's the Minecraft movie based
Okay,
on the
Minecraft.
Minecraft game, which is on its way to make $1 billion. I played the game. Most people have at least played it. I mean, younger kids love it, but at least some people watch it. And so that was the discussion. And there was a challenge in there to have me somehow try and teach you how to play Minecraft, which is, we got to have a separate conversation because,
Yeah,
oh
but
my
yeah,
God, it's going to be funny.
apparently several people in the audience, after getting to know me a little bit, decided that I could, quote unquote, make bank if I played Minecraft on YouTube. Now,
Yeah.
I still don't know what it is. I've been very occupied the last few days, so I really haven't had a chance to discuss anything Minecraft with any of my contemporaries, to which I don't have many at my job. It seems that I'm either 20 years younger than the people at my job or 30 years older than the people at my job. I'm the only 50 something that's actually employed, and it's very difficult on somebody like me who makes a lot of 70s and 80s pop culture references to gauge my audience, and I have none.
Yeah. Everybody who's younger than you will know everything about Minecraft. Guaranteed. All of them. Every single one. But, um, but that was, again, that was Sunday. And by the way, Sunday, I believe we raised approximately $271 on YouTube, directly on YouTube. Thank you, everyone who helped, because we were raising money for the Jericho Project. That's about, we're giving $4.68 for every $10 that we were able to raise. That means we're going to be donating at a minimum $127 to the Jericho Project to help veterans, the homeless, and families in need. And you helped with that process, Frank. So I thank you for that.
Well,
Uh,
let me. Well,
but
so YouTube takes like a 52% vig on donations.
34%, 34%. Every, so it's a super chat, super thanks, whatever it may be on YouTube. They take at least 34% of everything that comes in off the top.
Yeah, what a
But I made
racket!
a promise. It is, but I made a promise that out of every $10 raised, we were going to donate $4.68. By the way, why? Because that's my birthday, 4668. So $4.68 would go to the Jericho Project to help veterans, to help kids in need, to help the homeless. All issues that I'm very passionate about. And so I'm going with the gross number, regardless of the cut that YouTube took. So I'll make about $23 out of the whole thing after YouTube's cut, because there's 271. YouTube took 31%. That leaves 178. I'm going to give at least 127. That leaves me about $25 for me. But it wasn't about me. It was about the donation, and that's why I'm happy. I know YouTube says that the entire live stream was 11 hours, 56 minutes. For some reason, when you go over 12 hours of continuous live stream, YouTube doesn't count anything after about 11 hours and 56 minutes. They don't count that. They cut that off in the final product. So if you go to Rumble, you'll see the last half hour that I was on. YouTube cuts it off. Don't know why. It's one of the things. But that's about censorship. And getting into what's been happening lately, there's a lot of censorship out there. There's a lot of bias out there. I mean, all week we've been talking about the Trump tariff. And if you were to listen, and I talked about this on Sunday a little bit before the drop in the marketplace on Monday, I was talking about my experience as a stockbroker. I've been through 9/11. I've been through the dot-com bubble. I was there for the subprime markets. I'm familiar with the ups and downs of the market. We've been through about 5 recessions, at my age, 57. I've been through about 5 or 6 recessions, official recessions, in my lifetime. This isn't new. This isn't all encompassing. If you're listening to the news right now, most people are panicking. They're freaking out. They're saying, "Oh my God, my 401k is down." I think the national average is about $100,000. But realistically, the real average person is looking at a portfolio that's down about 20, 25%. And people are freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, I've lost all this money." No, you haven't. "Oh my God, I'm going to be in poverty. I'll never have that money back." No, you won't. That's not true. That's panic. That's fear. And if one thing makes money on Wall Street, it is extreme emotion and fear. It's a payday for the stockbrokers because people are running around like chickens without heads going, "Oh my God, the world is over. IBM is going to close tomorrow. Microsoft, Apple, US Steel, every industry is just going to go bankrupt tomorrow, and I've lost all my money." And if you believe that, then yes, you have a problem. But
Well,
realistically, well, I was going to say, realistically, if you didn't sell anything, you haven't lost money. Your
yeah,
value
well,
went down.
and the value was, according to what I read just about 5 minutes before coming online tonight, was the market gained $5 trillion in value today.
Yeah, it bounces. This is
Yeah,
all about emotion. The market moves for there's two things that make a stock market move. It is fact and emotion. What normally happens doesn't matter what's going on. The emotion about a fact will make the market move up and down. Pretty extreme. And then the facts come out, and that corrects whatever the emotion is. So if everyone's overly pessimistic, the market raises up on the facts that things are better than we thought. If it's the opposite, where you think things are going to be really great, and then you find out the facts that, well, it's the hype doesn't live up to the hype, the prices come down. It's kind of like that. If you listen to the mainstream news media right now, you would think that the world is going to end, that Donald Trump has created a depression. First of all, we've been in a recession since August of 2022. I've talked about it on this channel. I've talked about it on my own channel. I have the data points since August of 2022 proving America's been in a recession since August 2022 when they changed the definition. Trump isn't creating a recession. He's getting the blame for the recession we're already in. And what he's doing, and we can talk about that at length, but people are afraid what he's doing, it's going to hurt. That's true. It is going to hurt. It's going to be difficult, not impossible. There's a big difference. It will be difficult. It will be painful, but it won't be difficult. And long term, it will be beneficial. But the companies have not gone out of business. You haven't lost any money. You just have to wait. It's the same thing after 9/11. I had a conversation, just so people understand, put it in context. The week of after 9/11, the markets were closed. Everyone was expecting another attack any second. Everyone was afraid to go into the skyscrapers in Manhattan and across the country, thinking that a plane was going to fall from the sky and take you out. This is the nation. We were still mourning many of the people in the Twin Towers, and we still didn't have a full number of an accurate count of how many people had been lost. And the market opened up. And of course, it sank instantly. It was down like 15% at the open. And people were, "Oh my God, the market's over." And I had to talk to all my clients. And I told them this. And the week beforehand, I literally went to many of their homes and businesses and told them in person, "Do you think America is going to exist in 5 years?" And they said, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm being absolutely serious here. Do you think America will exist in 5 years?" And they said, "Well, of course it is." Okay, then that means we need to buy more. We need to invest. We're going to maintain what we have and we're going to buy more. Why? We bought the various companies. You can look at Cisco and uh, Amylin Pharmaceuticals, a lot of companies. And said, well, we bought these things because they're solid, stable companies. They made sense. They have products that we need. That hasn't changed. What changes is the emotion, and I can't control that. The emotion right now is everyone thinks the world's going to end. It's World War III. But if you believe America's going to be here in 5 years, we're still going to need every one of these companies, and they're going to make money, and the world will continue. So your value will come back up. So stop panicking, stop freaking out, buy a little bit more, lower your cost, and when the market moves back up, we're going to make more money. See, that's what professionals are supposed to do. People are panicking because they're doing it on their own. They're like, I got to get out now, otherwise I'll lose everything. No, America isn't collapsing. America will be here in 5 years. The market will turn around. It's just a matter of managing your fear. And CNN, MSNBC, a lot of these political leaders, they're taking advantage of people for the political gain to say, oh my God, Trump, MAGA, they have ruined America. You're devastated. You will never survive. You're going to die. You're going to lose all of your investments. Your retirement fund is gone. Vote Democrat. That's what they're doing right now. And that's dishonest, absolutely dishonest, and it's unfair.
Well, I look at, look at some of your fail-safe stocks, like Coca-Cola, for instance. There have been times when new Coke was introduced. Coca-Cola shares came down to practically zero. All right, that was the time to buy for it. But if you've been holding on to Coca-Cola for the last 25 years, your portfolio's quadrupled.
More than, yeah.
More than, right. Same thing, Microsoft, Google, anything that you bought that held on, your fail-safe, your fail-safe stocks are always going to rebound in one capacity or another. It's when everybody panics and they start selling stuff off that they lose their money. And half of your brokers that maybe they're unscrupulous, they're getting paid for the trade. They're not getting paid for the performance of the stock they're trading. They make money based on the transaction. You look at all of these brokerage houses that advertise on TV. Well, we get paid per trade. We don't get a percentage of this or a percentage of that. They want you to be scared every time you turn around so that you're buying this and selling that and buying this and selling that because while you losing money, they keep getting paid the same amount whether your stock goes up or down.
That's part of the business. As a former stockbroker, yeah, we're paid commission, but we're paid commission on making. Here's the difference. This is why a stockbroker or a financial professional is important, because it's not my money. I'm just as bad as a stockbroker, someone who's very familiar with all investment opportunities out there. I'm just as bad as anyone else when it's my money and I'm managing it. I'm going to go, oh my God, you're attached to that. You have a personal attachment to whether it's up or down at any given moment. But when it's someone else's money, you are more detached. It's not personal. My goal, or the professional's goal, is to make the best decision, to make the most money as possible, and to lose the least amount of money as possible. That's the goal. So that's why they're important. They don't panic sell. They don't care if stockbrokers right now are making money today because there are people screaming at them going, sell, sell, sell. And they're like, look, I'm going to warn you. You don't want to do that. That's going to hurt you. You're actually going to lose money if you do that now. Instead, sit back, get some money, lower our costs. We'll work through this. And I know from experience, after 9/11, people don't listen. They're like, nope, sell it. I need cash. They took an instant 25, 30, some cases 40% hit in the investment. 2 weeks later, they're calling me back going, oh my God, the market's now, maybe it'll take a little longer now. But again, 2 weeks later, they were calling me back, Mike, we got to buy back in. I'm like, sure we can, but you're never going to get that same cost basis you had. You won't make as much profit, and it's going to be more expensive. By the way, I get paid no matter what. I told you what to do. You didn't listen. No problem. But now you're going to pay me again to do something I already told you how to fix it. Same thing. Don't panic. Again, if you think, in my opinion, and you can deny it, but mark it down. I said it on April 6th. I'll say it again today. That if you believe America will exist in 5 years, sit back, relax, lower your costs if you can do it, if you can afford to. If you have to live on your retirements, adjust the way you live, your lifestyle, reduce it a little bit, because this is a difficult financial time period. And then wait, your money will come back. Your value went down. You didn't lose money, your value went down. There is a massive difference. And I truly, most of the news media should be sued for the way that they are reporting this, because they're conflating the value of your portfolio, your retirement, your 401k, the mutual funds, the value of that as being a loss. They are not the same thing. It's really dishonest. In fact, if I still had my Series 7 broker's license, and I was talking about this, if I said the same thing that's being said by the reporters on MSNBC, ABC, CBS, if I said the same thing they're saying, I would lose my license. I would be sued to oblivion because it's not true. It's not correct, and it is not the proper financial advice. They can say it because they're news reporters and they don't have a license. If I actually still have my license, I'd be sued and kicked out of the industry. That's how bad it is.
Well, that's enough for getting everybody down and depressed.
It's not depressing. This is an opportunity. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I know, but it's stock talk, and a lot of people kind of zone out with a lot of it as well. They're just they are just getting so bombarded with constant bullshit from the media and stuff like that. They just they wash their
Well,
hands.
I'm trying to make it not all kinds of. I'm trying to make it not. Is that good? Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, I was just adding in Dal Grimm, another one of our hosts. I'm trying to not make it all numbers and math and all, but it's just a realistic. But now the tariffs are an entirely different conversation. I think what's going on with the tariffs, let's talk about that aspect of it, not the investments, but the tariffs themselves. I think this is fantastic. I think Trump is preparing America for decades of success. It hurts. It absolutely hurts. Just like, changing the economics of Argentina with Milei, the president of Argentina. That hurt for a year. It's going to hurt America for a year, maybe 3. But the result for the next decade, maybe 2, is going to be prosperity. It's worth it. That's what I think. What do you guys think?
Dal has no mic on. There we go.
Oh. Nope, can't hear you now.
How about now?
Now I got you.
Okay. I think you're correct. The biggest thing with the tariffs right now is that Trump is setting us up on a foreign stage for prosperity. I think the follow-up has to be from the states. We can't just rely on the federal government to set everything up, because true success in the domestic sphere of things comes from the states. So all these states that are utilizing taxes and regulations and bureaucracy to manage their economies locally in the domestic markets, they have to relax some of those so that people can actually do industrial startups. They can actually get supply chains started and start investing in infrastructure. Otherwise, you're going to have the whole field laid open for us for international trade, but the domestic economy is not going to follow up behind it and actually strengthen the American economy. Like, for example, in New York, it's really hard to start a business in New York. It's really hard to get the permits, to get natural resources, to create the raw materials necessary to manufacture things, to create things. If you don't have those regulations relax and give incentive to people to invest in that infrastructure and to get those raw materials, places like New York are still going to hurt. They're going to lag behind all the other states that domestically are gearing up their people for success. So Trump's laying the groundwork in terms of foreign trade, but we as the people are not going to really see any benefit from this if the states don't start following suit. That's the way I see it.
Well, I think, follow me here, what Trump is doing is trying to not engineer the society, but to create innovation. He's trying to create innovation.
Right.
Because we need manufacturing. The peak of the U.S. manufacturing was about the 1950s after World War II. Why? Because no one else in the world was making anything. They didn't have the infrastructure. It got destroyed in wars.
Right.
We, the United States, were the only ones who had infrastructure. We will never hit that peak again because every country in the world has an infrastructure. So
Right.
they can compete. They can build things. Under the Obamas, we gave up manufacturing and said we'll be a service economy. No economy can survive on service alone. You must manufacture. You must be self-reliant. Otherwise, you will be dependent on others and you will fail every single time.
Absolutely.
Trump agrees with that. But we have been so used to just buying stuff and being a service rather than making anything home. We got used to it. It's like an addict. You get used to it. So you don't recognize the squalor and the damage that you have done. So Trump has to do something that's going to push us as a nation to change. And he's being very successful at that.
Right.
This is going to make us start building this. Think about it. Most of the stuff we buy from China, we don't need. Almost everything that we're buying from China is a luxury gimmick. It's not essentials. We're not buying the essential food from China. We're not going to China and buying our daily absolute needs. We're getting the extras from there. We're getting the number one thing we get from China, iPhones. Well, you don't need the next greatest, latest iPhone. You don't need that. You can use your phone 5, 6, 7 years old, and it will work fine. If you want every app at the latest, bell and whistle, sure. But do you need that? No, you can go 2 years without having to change your phone and save $2,000 because you're not going to get a new phone every year.
I would push back against that a little bit though, because
Go ahead.
a lot of our medicines, the raw materials for our medicines, actually comes from China. And the reason that we get the raw materials from them to manufacture a lot of our pharmaceuticals is because the way the CCP has subsidized raw materials in China, they have been able to sell it for pennies on the dollar to the United States for far cheaper than we can source a lot of those materials here in the United States. And it was a problem. It's a problem because those life-saving medicines that we make, things like aspirin, over-the-counters, aspirin, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, a lot of those raw materials are all bought from China because of the way the CCP subsidized the markets for those raw materials and how they obtain them in that country. So they're utilizing what essentially is slave labor to source all those raw materials, and then they would push them on American markets. So what we'd have to do is you'd have to divest yourself of that need for the raw materials from China and source them here in the United States, which will actually drive up prices in the short term. But
Yeah, but
if you're able to build the infrastructure and get multiple companies to invest domestically, the competition then drives the prices back down, and eventually we would be able to sustain ourselves with our own pharmaceuticals. We wouldn't need the raw materials from China to do so.
almost every raw material in China is in the United States. They're
Correct.
not getting they're cheaper because they have slave labor, yes, but they also have lower quality, and very often we see many problems. Remember when there was lead in the milk and in the rice coming
Yes.
from China? Yeah. There's almost nothing China makes that we don't make. They need us for their essentials. We need them for our luxuries. That's the main difference in what's being bought and sold. We buy luxuries from China. China buys essentials from us. There's nothing they make we can't make. And except for some certain heavy metals, which we thus are making a deal with Greenland to get it from there. We're
Right.
making certain deals with Africa to get it from there. So Trump has a plan. There is a plan. It is an involved plan. It's not a 30-second explanation plan. And the media doesn't tell you anything that takes more than 30 seconds to explain. But that's why it's a long-term benefit instead of instant gratification. Oh, see, we did something and it failed, but we did something and you should reelect us. Trump is actually saying, no, I'm going to do something long-term. And yeah, today it sucks, but in 5 years, you're going to love this.
Well,
So there's a big difference.
Yeah, it's not the home run. It's not the home run economics that we're used to. The home run promises, like what Hochul will say, is like, oh, we're going to take this really large industry and we're going to absorb it into New York, and it's going to be the thing that solves all of our problems. That he's not doing that. What he's basically doing is the equivalent of civilization building, and that's what we need right now. America needs to have a vision of what our civilization is going to be, not in the next year, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, for as long as we're able to keep this going. And the only way we can do that is if we are on top and the American people have something to really believe in. So go ahead.
I was going to say, it's for another video game analogy for some of the people out there who are like, oh my God, it's, all the finances. Make it simple. And for Frank, it's a video game analogy. It's like playing Banished. You have to build up the core initial foundation of your community. You got to get that blacksmith in before the end of the first winter. You got to get in the leather clothing manufacturing, and the hunters have to go out and start hunting, and you have to gather some of the mushrooms and berries before you can build up your community, even before you can get a farm. Why? Because it takes time, because it doesn't turn overnight, and then you can build a huge community. This is a video game, but it's based on the real world.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we're going to go to war with China over this. I don't think the European Union can survive this. They all depend on us.
Yeah.
And Trump is. What do you think?
Guys, listen, guys, I just got a phone call. I'm going to have to step out from the show for a little bit. Maybe I'm not sure how long I'm going to be back. Just do me a favor, when you guys get done with the ever exciting world of tariffs, just a quick hit on Kash Patel being relieved of his duties today for the ATF.
Yep.
And being replaced. Just hit on that. It's funny that it came a day after he abolished the zero tolerance for FFL law rules within the ATF. I don't like what I'm smelling. I got to do a little bit more digging. I'm supposed to see Kash Patel in 2 weeks. Maybe I can find out some information there that doesn't come to light between now and then, but touch on some of that stuff. Keep it live, keep it peppy. I'm going to try and get back before you guys close down. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Hope everything's going to be all right.
All right.
Well, we hope everything's going to be okay for Frank, obviously, but family and life come first, always. Uh, we're hearing a lot about Europe. We're hearing a lot about World War III.
Yeah.
That this is Armageddon. It's a financial Armageddon. It's going to lead to World War III, doom, gloom. I think that's the only message that's been out all week long. Do you think it? What do you think of it? Do you think Europe's going to suddenly attack America? Are we suddenly going to have Japan and South Korea join together to fight against America?
I don't think the EU is going to fight the United States. I think what's going to wind up happening is there's a lot of chaos right now in England and in the EU, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the populations there are starting to see their governments basically abuse them. They're finally waking up to the abuse, and so they're going to have their own domestic issues that are going to prevent them from actually dealing in any kind of military way with what America is doing. Now, China, on the other hand, they're kind of under the gun. They've had a lot of economic problems for the last couple of years, and the many of the sources like China Uncensored that I look at in terms of what's happening over there have been reporting, even through gleanings of state-run media, that Xi is actually in a very tight spot. Their economy could have probably weathered 30% tariffs, 34% tariffs, the original 34% on top of whatever they have, for a little while, 8 months to a year and a half, and they would have expected it to the whatever trade deal they could work out would have relented the tariffs, and they wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. But if Trump continues to stick with high tariffs for Chinese goods, the prognosis doesn't look good for China. It looks like they're going to have some major problems where even no matter how much they try to fix the prices of their currency, no matter how much they try to manipulate their economy, they're crashing. And the only thing that really will pull them out of this kind of slump, devoid of actually capitulating to the United States and coming to the table for a better trade deal, would be to actually start something militarily, and it would be focused on Taiwan, because right now Taiwan has the 90, I think it has like 94% of the world's share in the market for semiconductors and microchips.
Yeah.
So Taiwan is starting to invest in factories in the United States with the understanding that it's going to benefit both countries. America's going to get access to Taiwan's market share, and Taiwan is going to invest in America's infrastructure for manufacturing their own chips. And hopefully they're hoping to, well, but this is the reporting, that they're hoping to access American markets so that they can continue to hold on to that large market share. So
okay,
they're getting...
Now, I have to point out, and I'm not saying you're wrong. That is what's been said. Chuck Schumer was saying that famously about Micron.
Right.
They're building a factory in New York, and it's going to change everything. America's making a $50 million investment into building semiconductors here, and that's going to be great. And Taiwan's going to be part of it. That's
$50 is nothing.
By the time they finish building the factory, which already should have been made, and it isn't, by the time, at the rate that we build stuff, by the time that factory is built, it's going to be obsolete. Nothing in there is going to be useful. They spend easily $100 million a year in Taiwan to constantly upgrade all of their. That's not a one-time investment. That's their annual investment on their technology.
Right.
So it's a smoke screen to say we're building the chips here. No, we're not.
But the chips factories that are in Arizona, they're expanding. So there's already a factory that's operating out of Arizona. This company
Well, that's not New York.
No, No, but what I'm saying is that Taiwan's companies have already been here manufacturing chips for NVIDIA.
Mhm.
They're now expanding to the tune of, I think, 650 billion is what
Mhm.
they're talking about. So if Xi wants to somehow now cripple the United States, one of the ways it could do that is by actually consuming Taiwan, annexing Taiwan. And then all of a sudden, the money that would have been invested in American infrastructure to create the chips in Arizona dries up because now Taiwan is part of China. And we now have the choice. America has the choice. Well, do we go to save our investment from Taiwan and fight China for it? Or do we just capitulate and let China consume Taiwan? And I can almost guarantee you that the America would not want, and the government, the Trump administration will not allow China to take away something that is so important to America's first growth in terms of manufacturing, as far as the investments that Taiwan makes in this country. So that could be an issue. But that would be a regional thing. I think that would be a combination of Japan, Korea, and the Philippines all joining with the United States as the backbone, and then trying to protect Taiwan from invasion.
And I don't agree. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't see China invading Taiwan at this moment because of the carry-on problems. They would destroy so much of the semiconductor infrastructure that it hurts them more so than it hurts us. Economically, it's not worth it. Not when they have a tariff. Donald Trump increased the tariff to 125% on Chinese goods. They increased tariffs against America to 84%. That's, again, they need more of what we are giving them than what they are giving us. We're giving them essentials, they're giving us luxuries. We don't need, you can switch where you get that luxury from. We can make it ourselves or we can get it from another country. We don't need it from China. They can't go somewhere else for the essentials we provide them. So I don't think that's what they're going to do. But let's look at it from a different point of view. There's a growing commentary in the news media saying that Congress should override the president on the tariffs. That constitutionally they have the right and the power to step in and shut Trump down and push things back to the way they used to be. Of course, this is being led by many of the Democrats,
Right.
although there is about 5 Republicans, not Rand Paul, that's important, not Thomas Massey, who are the libertarians of the group. They're not involved in this. They're not trying to jump on this bandwagon with Democrats saying we have to usurp the power of the presidency. Forget who it is in the presidency. The fact that it's Orange Man Bad, Donald Trump, doesn't matter. They're now saying Congress can control treaties. That's a violation of the Constitution and the absolute powers of the president. You may not like the way the president does international negotiations, but that's what the president does. That's their job. And whether you think he's Orange Man Bad or a truth sayer doesn't matter. That's his job. And now they want Congress to come in and take that over. Are we kidding? Congress can't do anything. Go ahead.
The only way that the Congress becomes involved in any kind of foreign negotiations is if these tariffs were somehow tied to a treaty. If it was tied to a treaty, then the Senate would have to approve it in order to codify whatever was in the treaty. But as far as negotiations are concerned, the executive branch houses all of the diplomats for foreign diplomacy. So with Trump being the head of the executive branch as the president of the United States, he has full diplomatic authority in order to be able to negotiate these trade deals. Now, again, if the trade deals turn into treaties or are tied to treaties, then the Congress has to approve the treaty. They have to basically codify it and allow it to occur. But all of these tariffs are not being utilized in the end to produce tariffs. That's not what the tariffs are being used for. I think a lot of the propaganda that's going around is that, well, the tariffs are being assigned for tariff's sake. They're not. These tariffs are being used as a tool in negotiation, being like, look, we could have just free trade, but you guys aren't upholding any kind of end of your bargain to allow free trade to happen. If you're not going to be freely trading with us and allowing us to send our goods to your place without a massive tariff, then why should we allow you guys to just inundate our markets with all of your stuff for zero? That's not free trade. And
Well, we haven't seen. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and on top of that, we've made agreements with them for other things like military protection. We've got military security, a lot of services that America has provided for Europe since World War II that we didn't demand that they pay their fair share, to use the Democrat term. And we have contracts that say you are obligated to uphold this amount of your GDP towards this contract, NATO being a good example. 2%. You were supposed to pay 2% for your own defense through NATO. When did they start paying that? Nobody. Greece, Poland, and now I think Canada and France are the only ones that in the last, say, 8 years.
England.
And England. Okay.
England.
So that's 5.
They just moved.
Right. So that's 5 that have just started paying more than 2% or more of their GDP, as they were contractually obligated to do since the start of NATO.
Yeah, but that was never the problem because the United States would do it. And we assumed that excess for lots of reasons under Democrats and Republican presidents.
Right.
No one's ever pushed it.
Right. No one's ever pushed it until now, because we find ourselves as a country in a position where there's so much corruption that's costing us more money that we just cannot throw our wealth to the winds just because we can afford it. We can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, but my question isn't about Europe. My question isn't about Europe. That's a separate problem. I don't think Europe isn't going anywhere. They've already admitted it. They already said it in the conversations about the Ukraine war. They can't do anything without America.
No, but what I'm
bluster and puffs up their chest all they want. They need us, and they know it. They can't do anything without us.
But my point
I'm more concerned.
But my point is about contracts. Like, we've made a bunch of deals. I'm just putting at the NATO for the example of a contractual obligation between countries, and they haven't honored them. Just like a lot of these trade deals where they keep coming to the United States for funding, but they don't offer anything in return. They just automatically expect that we're gonna pay out for all the stuff. And it's like, look, you can't expect, how do you expect us to do all this? We're done doing this. It's more than we're done doing this. So make a real deal with us that's actually in everyone's best interest, and then we move on. That's it. That's all Trump wants. Is make a real deal.
I get that, but I don't. What I'm talking about now isn't Europe, the EU, their posturing, their desire for a better deal or better treatment, or more realistically, the treatment they've gotten historically, where they have an advantage against America. They don't have a choice. Let's be honest. They don't have a choice. No. Because they aren't. They have the illusion that they have the same kind of power as in the 1700s, the 1800s, that they're the great empires. They're not. And so their story doesn't matter. Right. We are the empire. This is us flexing our empirical power. Fine. But my concern is about changing or giving the American people the impression that Congress, not the Senate, not a treaty, that Congress, the House of Representatives, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez
Right.
has the right to try and usurp or excuse me, make decisions about international trade, not the president that we elected to do that. That's what they're trying to push for right now.
Right.
I
And that's
think that
not right.
that's no, that's unconstitutional, and I think that would create a bigger problem. But we're hearing a lot of people say, "Oh, well, maybe we should have Congress do that." I think that's an absolute. That would be the worst thing to happen.
I would say to those people that are like, well, we need Congress to do that. What has Congress done just in the last 6 months? What have they done? They passed a continuing resolution to keep the government open. They've
Mm-hmm.
bickered and argued, but they actually haven't codified anything that the current administration has run on. Everything that's been done up to now has been through executive order and through the executive branch for the bureaucracy. What has Congress done? Zero. Congress has done zero. They haven't codified any of the cuts to help cut spending. They haven't lowered the debt ceiling, or hell, even just capped it and left it there. They've refunded everything that they possibly could through that continuing resolution that was based on 2024 early Biden budgets. So we're paying for the exact same thing that we did under Biden right now, when we could have had all that waste, all that spending that Doge has earmarked to the president that is either fraudulent, wasteful, or mismanaged, could have been codified, rescinded, and then returned to the Treasury to lower the deficit or do something else with that is effective. Congress isn't interested in that. Right now, they're arguing on the floor about whether they're allowed to vote by proxy instead of actually being there and doing their job. And what did they do when they couldn't come to an agreement? Yeah. They went on frickin' vacation. How is that them doing anything? And you want to give them the authority and the power to sit there and make a deal in foreign trade, or to second guess the foreign diplomacy that is squarely ensconced and enshrined in the executive branch? And you want to give these nut jobs the authority to second guess that? No, I'm sorry. The Congress has done zero to earn that kind of authority. They have not done a thing. And for what it's worth, even though the markets are volatile right now, even though there's a lot of saber rattling and there's a lot of, unsurety as about what's going to happen in the next couple of months, I voted for this. When Frank and I were talking about, you got to rip the Band-Aid off, and you got to make sure that we're actually restructuring back to a time when the United States was actually working with minimal corruption. You're never going to eliminate all of it, but at least minimal corruption. This is what it looks like. And this is what we voted for. This is why Trump is in office right now. And you'll see on social media, the people will be talking about, well, there's a lot of people that are second guessing, voting for Trump. I'm not. I'm waiting to see what happens, because you know what? I'm even now, when things are so unsure, I'm at a better spot with things being unsure than I ever was during Biden, or that I was under Obama, when I was so poor that I didn't have a savings. I actually have a savings. Now I've been able to actually put money aside for the first time in 4 years. That isn't much, but it's something.
I may have missed a little bit there. I apologize, because my headset went wonky for a moment. But here's the thing. I think what's really important about all of this is not so much the savings. I'm more concerned about the one of the reasons why Congress has done so little. They're delaying. It's a delay tactic. They don't want to codify anything. That's one of the problems. We talked about, Donald Trump is doing everything by executive order. And I don't like that. I don't like executive orders. It's easy to reverse. The next president can reverse everything that Donald Trump has done with the wave of a pen because Congress isn't taking action. And Congress isn't taking action is because they're afraid of putting their name behind the ideas that are long-term solutions, not instant solutions, because
Right.
it takes effort and it takes time and planning, and it may be painful and it's going to be unpleasant. And they don't want to be attached to that because they might lose power. And that's why they're delaying. And that's my problem because that's not what the Constitution's about. That's not what our government's about. We're
Correct.
supposed to be looking for the future. We're supposed to be fixing the future problems and introducing people like AOC or Elon Omar, Rashida Tlaib, letting them be in charge of our finances for the future when they can't figure out our finances for the minute. They can't
Right.
even put their name on the dotted line now for what's happening right now. We're supposed to put our trust and faith in them for the next 10 years, and we're willing to rewrite the Constitution to do that? I don't think so. I think that's
No.
a terrible idea.
No, and that's why this coming midterms, people have to really understand. All right, we got through the general election. We kind of fixed things in the federal government, but the midterms is where you have the opportunity as a people to really support Donald Trump by getting people that will work with him and codify the things that the people want. That's the midterms. That's how you start changing things in Congress. That's how you start changing things in your state government. A lot of governors are up for election this coming midterm. You want things to change, you have to also change what happens in your state. You have to change who gets sent to Congress that's actually willing to do the job and put their name next to something. Otherwise, this is all for naught. He's going to do all this stuff. Donald Trump's going to do all this stuff. He's going to set everything up, and then it's all going to be wiped out because in the next presidential election, people are just going to be like, "Meh," and they're going to let some bozo in that's going to basically turn us into the rest of the EU. We'll be
Well, probably.
either that, or we'll wind up being communist with American trappings. Like that's really what we were on the road for. Is you're going to see it's going to be feudalism in terms of having an elite nobility class that uses communist population controls with an American bless you with an American flavor. So you'll have all the little flag waving, you'll have the American, you'll have the stars and stripes and everything, but underlying all of that is going to be communist style population controls. And then you're going to be ruled by a bunch of party members that are the acting new nobility of a feudalistic system with somebody like Xi Jinping right at the top that's going to be the king of America. I
don't think that's, I don't see us getting there from where we are here with the tariffs. I don't see the tariffs bringing us to that point.
I'm not talking about the tariffs.
This,
I'm talking about what the culture was up until Donald Trump was reelected. That's what we were looking at. And then those world leaders are all going to come together, and they're going to be able to rule the globe. That's the whole point of the globalization as it was under Schwab. That's what he wanted.
I don't necessarily agree with. I don't necessarily agree. I know that theory with the WEC, the WEF, World Economic Forum, the World Economic Council, the UN. I've heard those theories, and I understand them. I do understand, and I think there are problems in that, but I don't think that's a realistic fear for America. Authoritarianism, yes, we've seen a lot of authoritarianism in the democratic policies.
Yeah.
We've seen that come out, and we see that the Democratic Party has become more and more. I mean, looking at the censorship, look at the violence.
Yeah.
That if you disagree with the progressive democratic policy, as an example, Elon Musk, when he was on the Democratic side, they were talking about green energy, save the earth, buy an electric car from Elon Musk. Elon Musk has a difference in his political ideology now, and he's trying to promote both his business and some of the cost cutting, shrinking the government, some of the ideas the Democrats walked away from. Literally, these are some of these things are things that many of the Democrats supported tariffs throughout their entire career for 2 decades. And today they're against it because it's Donald Trump. But yet these are the same tariff supporters that have 2 decades of record on the record saying, no, tariffs are great for America. We need more tariffs. So they're being completely dishonest for politics. And because Elon Musk now is on the team that's working to do something that Democrats would normally agree with, but because they kept moving left and it's about their power over everyone else, suddenly they're saying, oh, well, screw green, the climate change doesn't matter anymore. Green energy doesn't matter anymore. Screw the electric vehicles. Elon Musk is terrible. Go out and burn down the Teslas wherever you can find them, destroy them, threaten the people that own them. That's authoritarian.
Yeah.
You want to talk about fascist? That's fascist. You don't like Tesla because the guy in charge of Tesla no longer is on your side. He's no longer in your control. He's not donating his money to your team. Therefore, all the other reasons you said he was fantastic no longer count. Now he's an evil bad guy. He's a traitor, and you have to turn away. So I get it. That's the politicking of it, and that's, I think, the problem why we can't see Congress step in and try and take over the powers of the presidency, especially when it comes to things like setting tariffs. It's not their power because of this very same example. It leads to authoritarianism, in my opinion.
Right. No, and that's exactly what globalization was supposed to do. It was supposed to create an authoritarian type of world government that would be separate countries working in lockstep with each other for a common ideology that ultimately led to a centralized form of power in the fewest number of hands. That changes. That changes now, because now we see that there's been a rise in the last few years with a populist movement that encompasses not just the right per se and the left per se. It's actually a bunch of people towards the center ideologically that are sick of watching what governments do and the way the people in general are treated, and so they're trying to rein in their governments by putting populists in place. Italy did it. France tried to do it. They ended up jailing the populist candidate. Romania tried it.
Le Pen.
Yeah, they tried to jail the Romanian president too. As far as I know, the jury's still out on him, whether he's actually going to wind up in prison somewhere. Who else did it? Poland has a populist form of government. It's kind of.
But I don't care about them.
No,
they're foreigners.
But what I'm saying is, as far as the world is concerned, the populist movement is not unique to the United States. It's actually a worldwide phenomenon. We just happen to have it more pronounced because we have more influence in the world. So everyone's looking at us right now to see where this goes. And if our civic nationalist populism holds and America stays free, I think you're going to see a lot of that start to bleed out to the rest of the world, which would be a good thing.
I don't think so. But honestly, one, I don't think so, because they're so, as bad as we are with China, in terms of we're looking to China for luxuries, and we've been living on, yes, we have the highest quality of life in the world, but we're kind of addicted to that high quality of life. And as much as that is the case, Europe and the Western nations are addicted to the United States, taking care of their defense so that they can afford the social. It goes back to the old saying, socialism is fantastic as long as you have someone else's money. And they're just now starting to realize, oh, wait a minute, if we have to pay for our own defense, actually, building up our own countries, we can't afford that and be socialist. You can't do them. There's just not enough money if it's only their money. And so that's going to be a change for them. Let's switch, though, a little bit, because I know there's a lot in this tariff thing, and it has a lot of branches. But Frank mentioned Kash Patel. Something
Yes.
happened to him today?
So there's not a lot of details. Kash Patel was removed today.
Removed from what? What do you mean? When you say removed,
So
you mean he's
he
been?
was removed as the acting director of the ATF.
Yeah,
So
he wasn't. That wasn't what he got confirmed.
no, he wasn't confirmed for the role of the ATF. He was confirmed as the FBI director, which he still is.
Right.
Um, it has he just now has been relieved of duty as far as the acting director of the ATF, and U.S. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll is now serving as the acting ATF director, and that's per Reuters as of right now. There was no explanation. It's just that he was removed by the DOJ, probably to focus on things going with the FBI. They've had a lot of successes lately, which is what his
Yeah,
actual
but
job was supposed to be in the first place. So that's not
yeah,
a big deal.
He's not supposed to
However,
be in charge of the ATF.
however, one of the things that makes this strange was that even as the acting director of the ATF, um, he had taken many of the ATF members and actually transferred them over to the FBI and then
Mm-hmm.
sent them to the border.
Mm-hmm.
He reduced the ATF numbers and was doing a lot of good things with the ATF. Like he knew what the people wanted as far as what we want done with the bureaucracy. And so he was moving them, he was shuffling people around and he was cutting people away. And one of the big things right now is the DOJ has been tasked by Trump with looking at violations of the Second Amendment, the ATF being one of the greatest, what would you call it, offenders?
Impediments.
Yeah, impediments to it. So they just recently struck down the zero tolerance rule from Biden when he gave it to the ATF, and that was partially Kash Patel. And it seems like
Okay, but
the strange coincidence is that just after he does that, they now relieve him of duty. So
okay, but
that's why it seems kind of weird. He was doing what the people wanted, and then all of a sudden he's removed. So some people are
well,
looking at that and they're kind of being suspicious about it. From what I understand, he was just relieved of duty because there's so much to do with the FBI that he cannot divide his attention between two departments. He needs to focus on the FBI.
okay. So simplifying it, Kash Patel, who's in charge of the FBI, that's what he was nominated for. That's his job. Take care of the FBI.
Correct.
He assumed temporarily
Mm-hmm.
the position of the ATF, which has its own director, its own different department of the government, has its own individuals in charge of that. People are freaking out because Kash Patel, who's in charge of the FBI, is no longer in charge of the ATF, which was temporary in the first place. What's the
Correct.
problem? This sounds like people screaming about, oh my God, Elon Musk is leaving Doge, and that means that Trump is having a problem. He was always going to leave Doge. That's part of the special government
Right.
employee status. He only had 130 days. We knew that day one. When Kash Patel takes over the ATF, it's temporary. We know that. And yes, he's reducing the size of the ATF because the ATF is just a nightmare in terms of the Second Amendment, in terms of a lot of things, in creating their own regulations as law. But he was never supposed to be there. He shrank it. Fantastic. But there was always going to be someone else in charge of that. So what's the big deal? I don't see the problem. I don't see why people are freaking out about that.
I don't know that they're freaking out about it. It just seems suspicious because he was, like I said, Kash Patel was actually doing something that the people wanted. Not perfectly,
When you
but
say the
close.
people, who do you mean? You're saying the people. Who?
The people. Okay, so the people, the American population that voted for Trump's administration, wanted to see the ATF.
American voters. Okay.
American voters wanted to see the ATF reduced, if not abolished, preferably abolished, but at least reduced. Kash Patel was doing that by shuffling people around and actually removing the teeth, a lot of the teeth from the ATF. Then after the zero tolerance policy was killed. It was just removed by Kash Patel. It's not even like an hour after that where he also says, "Oh, by the way, I've been relieved of duty." For
Yeah,
the
but it was going to happen anyway.
right. So the
I
ATF,
don't see this. I don't see that being sinister.
I don't either. But the way Frank made it sound like there were other things in motion. But all I do know is that Pam Bondi has basically taken on this Second Amendment charge for President Trump. And so far, I think that may be where a lot of the suspicion is coming from because of her previous embarrassment for other things that have been promised by the Trump administration when it comes to like the release of the Epstein files for the JFK files. At least Kash Patel was seemingly competent at what he was doing, and now they have this other guy in that's answering directly to Bondi. And they're not sure whether she's actually going to be able to handle it or not. So far, her track record has not been the most stellar, and that's just objective.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't see it as being such a bad thing. I don't, and I understand this isn't the story that you were necessarily following. That Frank was following it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't even hit my radar of. Yes, I personally would like to see the ATF removed. I think they don't serve the purpose they were created for in a long time. I think they've been turned into a weapon against Americans in terms of the Second Amendment. That they're there to strip people's rights and to create a barricade between American citizens and their rights. We've seen that consistently.
Yeah.
And a lot of the rulings by the Supreme Court have confirmed that. But it sounds like this is a distraction story because I don't think it's whether it's Pam Bondi or Kash Patel in charge of the ATF or this the undersecretary or director, excuse me. I don't care because shrink it, repurpose it, defund it, and if Congress would get their act together, eliminate the ATF. I don't care. I want Kash working on the FBI. I want Bondi working with the DOJ. Stop wasting time with the ATF. They shouldn't be there in the first place. I don't see why. And the fact that the media is hyping this as if, just like with Elon Musk, this is something we always would expect to happen,
Right.
regardless of what was being done. They were never supposed to be in charge of that. That was always a temporary position. And they're just trying to create red meat so that they can have a better chance in the midterms, I think. That's how I'm reading this.
That would make a lot of sense. I mean, the biggest thing I think is the way it's being reported, where he's been removed. So the media isn't really coming out and saying this, but I think it's implied in a lot of their reporting, is that there's a reason that he was being removed. And so
that's what I'm saying. That's them saying Elon is quitting the Trump administration, which is categorically not true.
Yeah, it allows a lot of speculation. And that speculation is what the Democrats are hoping will stir up some suspicion and distrust to try and drive a wedge in to make it so that they have an in when they try to go for some better messaging. One of the other things that was reported by Reuters right around the same point is that the ATF actually may be absorbed into the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. So the DEA.
The DEA?
Yeah. So basically what they say senior Justice Department officials are currently weighing whether to merge the ATF with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration as a part of an effort to cut costs. So that the ATF may not exist as the ATF much longer.
I don't know they could do that.
Well,
because they would take an act of Congress.
Maybe. Or they could basically just keep the name and then just shift everybody over to the DEA. So,
Kind of like what they're doing with the Department of Education.
correct.
The shell still exists, but there's no one there.
Right. The lights are off and nobody's home. So
Yeah.
until Congress actually acts to codify any of this, this is all just stuff that's happening. And I mean that in the broadest sense. That this is just this is the executive branch doing what they are able to meet the promises that they made to their voter base. But none of it's permanent without Congress acting. And the only way Congress is going to act is if people show up and tell them you're either going to do it or you're fired. They have
Here's my problem.
They have to see that the
Go
people
ahead.
are behind this. Otherwise, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to drag their feet.
Well, they're not. Democrats are going to drag their feet no matter what, because the less that actually happens, the better their chances in 2026 for the midterm elections.
True.
So they don't want anything to happen. They're screaming bloody murder about everything all day long, all over the place. That's what Cory Booker's 25-hour speech was all about. He's just wasting people's time. By the way, Peace Logic, John Lasham. Hey guys, good to see you.
Yep.
That's the chat. And by the way, folks in chat, if you disagree or agree with anything we're talking about, you want to have a comment, please do. We look forward to hearing your comments. So my thing, from what I'm saying, is Congress needs to take a definitive stance. Either we are shrinking the government, which means defund the ATF, defund the Department of Education, make that a fact, or at least put it up for debate. Put it in front of the American people. Say, if you agree or if you disagree, this is what we promised. This is what's on the table. This is what we're going to do. Give the people the choice. And I think overwhelmingly, the American people, regardless of political affiliation, want to see the ATF disbanded. They want to see the Department of Education disbanded. Few other departments. Combining ATF with DEA is just a waste of time and manpower and confusion. Who's going to be in charge?
Right.
What happens if you change the executive order? How do they get repurposed? It's a different training, different structure, different locations and resources. It's a waste of time and money. It's not effective. I think that's a dumb idea. And again, it sounds like something that the news media are rewording and revamping things to make the worst possible outcome seem like the only reality, as opposed to what is the reality. Again, I point to, and it's very simplistic, but they say Elon Musk has a problem with the Trump administration. He's exiting. He's giving up on politics and giving up on the Trump administration when he has a contractual fundamental time limit, and everyone knew it. So it's not that he's giving up. He has no choice. He was only there for 130 days. It's the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does make sense. And like I said, it's just a workaround. Because they know right now Congress is doing nothing. They still are doing nothing. And it's because, as you say, they don't want to put their name to any of these changes because they don't want to hurt their chances of actually getting a vote in the midterms. But here's the thing. If you want Congress to do something, it has to matter to them. And the only thing that matters is staying in power. So if you want to see these changes, we, the American voter, we, the people, the citizenry that this mostly affects, have to show up and tell our Congress people in no uncertain terms, you don't put your name on this, you're not coming back. That's what we have to do. Because this, as I said, he could work all 4 years. Trump could work all 4 years and work magic with the executive office. Better than anybody has ever done before. I'm sure he would put it that way too. I am the greatest executive. Always do it. You know, he could do amazing things by himself with his just the powers that he possesses as in the office of the presidency, but they are worthless in the future if everything can be struck out by a new administration. So what really has to change is how a Congress operates. And the only way you're going to get Congress to operate the way you want is you have to show up and you have to tell them, as an American voter, as their constituent, if you don't do what we voted for, you're out. Doesn't matter whether you have term limits or not. You don't get tenure just by staying in Congress. This is not a teaching gig.
Well, they think it is. They think that if you've been elected, that gives you tenure.
And why would they not think that? Because traditionally, once you're elected in, you always get reelected. So why do you not think that you have tenure? We have to break them of this mindset and be like, look, just because you got elected once doesn't mean that you get to go back. You either do what the constituents tell you to do, or you don't go back. And we can't just let the system run itself. It doesn't work that way.
Oh, I agree with you, but people, essentially, what you're saying is people need to go out and vote.
Yes.
They need to be part of the process.
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
to pick candidates and support people who actually support their ideas. I agree with that. We've always said that. Will people do it? I doubt it.
Yeah. But the other thing is keeping your base engaged. Like Sean Farash is somebody that I follow on social media. Sean Farash has the best Trump voice impersonation that I have ever come across. Fantastic.
Okay.
He did one for Cinco de Mayo. It was a gas. Anyway, he was talking about how you see all these people coming out for these anti-Elon, anti-Tesla, anti-Trump protests, right? Granted, the answer that's being given is these are paid protesters. They don't really matter. Well, here's the problem with that. They show up. These people, whether they get paid or not, they show up. And so you see hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people, all standing outside of these Tesla dealerships, and the media laps it up and broadcasts it all over the planet. And this is exactly the same formula that they used to keep everybody in a sense of minority, when really the people that voted in Trump were the majority. The people that want America first. Not just because Trump is the head, but because we truly believe in this country. We love this country. We voted for America first as the majority, but we all thought we were the minority because the media takes these constructed populations of protests and broadcast it out across the media network, and it makes it look like, wow, there's a lot of support for this. I guess we're weird. We're off. We're alone. We really don't have the right way of thinking, and that's wrong. For every protest outside of a Tesla, there should be people standing outside, maybe not in the same location, but celebrating the United States, running around with flags, having marches with like the drummer boy and the fife player, walking down the street playing Yankee Doodle, stuff from our history reenact, just something to celebrate the U.S. and to show that this country is worth having.
Yeah, but that is happening, and you have the left, and we've talked about this before. I know I talked on my program about it, where we've had the guy shows up in Utah at the Tesla dealership to counter protest. He's in support of Elon Musk. He's in support of whether it's green energy or the Trump agenda, the Trump administration, but he showed up to support that. And a leftist, 70-year-old leftist, decides to try and run him over with his car.
Yeah.
We've seen that there was in New York last week, a young woman was going around, it's one of those live person on the street interviews, and just was there asking people, what do you know about abortions? What do you know about the process? And a leftist, being asked that question, decided to start beating this woman on camera because she didn't like the question. She didn't like what the answer was. We see the left is hyper violent on a consistent basis, and it's being downplayed. We're being told that's not the big deal. They're just being leftists. It's justified because, they're anti-fascist, but they're being violent. They burn every time there's a protest from the left. something is broken into, something is being looted, something is being arson, someone's being attacked every single time. You don't get that from the right. You don't get that from the libertarians or the conservatives or the Republicans. You don't get that from them. It's only the left that does that.
Right, and I get it, and that's the reason why more people than just one or two people need to show up at these things. Like that's essentially what it is we have to organize a ground game that's equally as not powerful, but as prevalent as the left does. The left is very good at collectivizing their behavior. When you try to get a bunch of us in a room that are all free thinkers and independents and stuff, the term is herding cats. It's worse than that. It's worse than herding cats, because it's like taking a cat that really doesn't care, giving it reason, and then it sits down and pontificates for 2.5 hours as to why they should or shouldn't do it, and each cat has a different idea of why they should or shouldn't do it, and then eventually they all just give up and just go and eat pizza or something. Like that's about as collective as it gets for us. And
well, I've seen. Go ahead.
And what Sean Farash was talking about is when you want to engage the vote, keep the voter base engaged, you have to have things like the Trump rallies, where you have masses of people that just show up. Well, that takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of logistics. Pressler can do it. The walkaway movement can do it. And they do it by doing public work projects when they're not registering voters. So like when Pressler was not registering voters, what was he doing? He was engaging the community to go down and clean up their own community when the city municipality wouldn't do it in Baltimore. They moved something like 12,000 tons of trash out of this one neighborhood. He went to California, did the same thing, cleaning up the railroad tracks and the homeless encampments. I think it's Brandon for the walkaway movement. Brandon. He did something similar where he was doing community engagement things, and they weren't talking about politics necessarily. They were looking at things in the community that could be done and then bringing them out and doing it in the name of being an American. That's the kind of thing that we need, so that we can keep people engaged and keep people thinking about how to make this country great again. Not just in politics, but just overall as a community. We don't get that. Instead, a lot of what our communities see are these people being paid to show up to burn Tesla to the ground, to vandalize Tesla charging stations, to throw Molotovs and end up lighting themselves on fire. I mean, that's what they're seeing. And the media laps it up. And the media pushes it out all over and says, look at this unrest. Aren't you people afraid that this unrest could come to your community? Wouldn't it be better just to capitulate and, appease these people so that we can actually move forward in progress? No.
The media is an active player. They are not neutral. They have a political agenda. And as we have seen in poll after poll, study after study, the news media are overwhelmingly, about 80, depending on which poll you want to look at specifically, it is at least 80%, if not about 93% of every newsroom, of every media organization, they're 80 to 93% leftist.
Yeah.
And that covers everything from Democrat to progressive to far left socialist. They start at Democrat and go further left in every one of these industries, the news media industry. So they have a partisan objective. And we shouldn't be surprised. Almost 75% of all the people in the news media, well, they graduated from journalism schools where Harvard, Columbia, over at Cornell University, UCLA, Binghamton University, left-leaning institutions that have been pushing the progressive ideology. So it's not a surprise that they've already picked the side. They just haven't been honest about it. And they're not telling people the truth that they're partisan and that they have blinders on to anything that isn't the approved message for their ideology, not even for the politics, but for just their ideology.
Yeah, but that's why the community engagement is so important, because when Pressler did these things in Baltimore or in California, when Brendan did these things with the walk away movement, it was so big that even the mainstream media had to pick it up. And when you're picking up trash and throwing it away or getting it hauled out of a neighborhood and actually making the neighborhood livable, getting rid of the infestations of the rats and everything else, how can you spin that to be a bad thing? And there were hundreds of people at least doing these things for these communities, and it wasn't just one color or another. It was just people, Americans, coming together, cleaning up a neighborhood. Those types of community projects, those types of community organizing events are what is lacking in the Republican side of the messaging, because we tend to overthink but underact. So we need more action, and the left is great at that. The left is great at not a lot of thinking, but definitely a lot of action.
True, the left does go out and protest more. Absolutely, they're more. Again, they create more riots. Absolutely, and I don't want to see anyone on the right, Republican, conservative, so forth. I don't want to see them doing what the left does: go out and commit arson, destroy property. But that's what the left does.
Yeah.
Scott Pressler he's right now, he's in New Jersey. He's pushing to try and turn New Jersey purple for 2026. He's doing it right now. It's just not being reported. He has the events. He has people coming out. It's just not being reported by the mainstream news media. And that's why we don't hear about, again, the guy at the Utah Tesla, where they're trying to run over Republicans and Trump supporters and Elon Musk supporters and Tesla American business supporters. That didn't get national attention. It was local and regional, but it's there. And if you didn't know to look for it, or know that if you don't look at American politics across the nation, you would never know about that story, because the mainstream said, well, that's not approved. We don't like that story. We're not going to talk because it doesn't make our side look better. Democrats don't look better in it. So they skip that story, and we see it all the time. But maybe, and I'm shifting a little bit here, but there's a lot that we're not hearing about, because the media is very much cherry picking the news to affect the way people. It's emotional manipulation. It's media manipulation. It's definitely propaganda. We're seeing it actively. When was the last time you heard anything about the Houthis?
Yeah, it's been a couple days.
Last week, Donald Trump had authorized additional, and he's been continuing to put pressure on the Houthi terrorists who have been locking up. This is a mini war, started under the Biden administration as a reaction to Hamas and their terrorist actions on October 7th, 2023, and the kidnapping of American citizens and torture of American citizens. We will never forget that. But the Houthis, in simpatico with Hamas, decided that they were going to have a mini war in the Red Sea, which is starving people in Africa and Southeast Asia, because they're blocking off the trade route, the shipping, which is causing people to be starved. Yeah. Trump was bombing and effectively removing their leadership as well as their capabilities. He was actually on the offensive. He wasn't waiting for the Houthis to do something. He was actively going after them, stopping them from attacking these ships so that the Red Sea can open up. This is good for the world. It's good for global peace. It's good for people who are starving. It helps with poverty around the world. This is a positive. News media doesn't want to talk about it. We haven't heard a word about it. It's happening right now. We're still actively going after the Houthis to open up that trade route so people will be fed in
Yeah.
the world. News media is not talking about it. I mean,
No,
and there's more than just that story. Go ahead.
the last time the news media was trying to talk about it was when they said they made the allegation that Trump had bombed a local community meeting. So the way they reported on it was he put out a truth social
Mhm,
about you see like an aerial photo view, and then you see a
mhm.
bunch of bombs explode where there's people standing in a circle, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, these Houthis are, meeting for a planning session to like strike at shipping. Oops,
Mhm.
now they're not." And that was the tweet. Well, that got cycled, and people were trying to allege that what he had actually hit was a group of civilians that were coming together for a town meeting out in the middle of nowhere, just out in the middle of nowhere. Like that.
Yeah, but
There was
here's the thing.
way to prove or disprove that that was actually the case, and
Well,
because the shipping hadn't been threatened after that event, it kind of leans more towards, yeah, his intelligence was
hey, check
correct.
out the
He just blasted half the Houthis out of creation. So
well, yeah,
no,
because the Houthis don't have they're terrorists. They don't have uniforms. They
no,
don't have traditional military setups. They do look like this is why Hamas says no Hamas soldier has ever died. There are no Hamas soldiers. They're just civilians. That's why they say in terms of the war with Hamas versus Israel, they say they always report civilian deaths. There's no soldiers. They have never, according to Hamas, the terrorist organization, they've never lost a single soldier. Only civilians die, and they're always women and children. They're all women and children. There's never a young man that ever dies with the war between
right.
Hamas, a terrorist organization, and Israel. It's because they're lying, and terrorists lie. Why? Because they're terrorists. They always lie.
I
So
always
same
thought
thing with
I always
good.
thought the Hamas uniform was the black pajamas, the black balaclava, and the green sash across their foreheads.
Same thing you find over at Harvard.
Yeah.
Same outfit at Harvard and Columbia and all the major colleges. Same uniform.
What is it with
What a
authoritarians in
coincidence.
black pajamas? Did the Viet Cong wear black pajamas too? Vietnam, were they
Yeah, so
in black pajamas?
some of them. Yeah.
Or the tiger stripe? Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. But it's we're seeing this commonality where people are being misinformed and the big stories, the stories that are affecting us all, they're getting overlooked. We're not seeing the biggest thing is Congress. People have to pay attention to what's happening with Congress. We've got the tariff, and everyone's talking about that. And that's, again, being hyped up negatively,
Yeah.
conflating your value going down with actual losses. So people will be terrified, they'll be fearful, not paying attention to the fact that, well, hey, are we building up American infrastructure? We are. Are we shrinking the size of the government? We're trying to.
Yeah.
What are the states doing about the Department of Education? Are they preparing the state to be able to teach our kids better, to be more responsive?
I don't think
There's
so.
billions of dollars that will be available to help the homeless, to help uh, for medicine and food, for people in need, for housing, because we don't have to have a Department of Education. We don't have to waste $120 billion a year on something that's not effective. You don't hear about that ever.
No.
I think that's where we're.
And the irony is that it wouldn't matter for New York anyway, because New York is still broke. Like they relied on that federal education money from the Department of Education because they have no way. They've misspent all of the taxes that they've collected for everything else for social programs. So if it wasn't for the federal dipping into the American taxpayer from all over the nation to send to New York to pay for the students, which New York spends the most on students, that was all federal money. Federal money
Yeah, but
and your local school taxes that go
yeah, but
directly.
we're spending it. Yeah, but we're spending it on administration. We're not spending it on
That's
students.
right.
And the same thing can be said about California and Illinois. Most of the bluer than blue states are all in debt. They're all incapable. We know.
Right.
Remember when Trump, for 24 hours, cut off all the funding to the states, and 11 of those bluer than blue states, Washington State, Colorado, obviously California, and New York, New Jersey, they all came together in a live stream within an hour or two of Trump's shutting down federal funding to their states. An hour, it took about 2 hours for all their AGs, attorney generals, to come together and say, we can't run the state without the federal government's money. That's
Yeah.
how inefficient and ineffective they are. That within 2 hours, they were already looking at everything failing because they can't efficiently, effectively run any of the blue states without outside money. Again, socialism is fantastic when you have someone else's money, but when you got
Well,
to pay for it yourself, it fails.
right. And what I mean by them taking that federal money is that they were using it to pay the administration for New York State schools. But so the money they were collecting was for the student. But now that the Fed's not paying them to pay the administrations, they're going to have to cut a lot of their friends' jobs that were in administration in order to have the money left over to actually spend on the student. They're not going to do that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to get rid of all the administrative positions that the schools have here because it makes them money. Those administrators go and take the federal money that they were paid in order to run the school and they donate it to campaigns. If they lose their jobs, that's no more donations. So the state doesn't want to see the Department of Education closed. They want it to remain open so they can get federal funding so that they can launder the money from the nation into administrative positions that end up winding up in the coffers of the Democrat Party as donations. That's why the state's not ready. They couldn't afford it because they'd actually have to pay the administrators from the state coffers, and they don't have the money for that. And if they try, and especially in New York, since we have a large skilled population of citizenry that is leaving, you're not going to have the people that are left behind, like you and I, are going to wind up having a whole bunch of taxes escalated on us if we have to pay for administrative positions. So we're going to have to demand that those administrative positions be axed, and they're not going to do that. They'd rather see us leave.
Well, they've been asking us to leave under Cuomo, under Hochul. They've directly said, leave, get out of New York. They made that very clear for years now.
Yeah.
And when you say skilled individuals, you mean people like electricians, you're talking about carpenters, plumbers, machinists. You're talking about that, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about people that have any sort of skill. So, I mean, even to a certain degree, people that work with the mentally or the physically handicapped, they have a skill. Like when I was doing it for a little while, I worked with that population, and we had to just, we were under license of an RN, and we'd have to dispense medications and things like that. You had to know the medications that you were dispensing and to make sure that they weren't interacting with each other. So on a certain level, I would consider that skilled labor. So there's that. Any of your medical staffing is going to be skilled labor. A lot of doctors left after the mandates. That was the state doing that because
they didn't have a choice.
They didn't have a choice. They had to go practice somewhere else because the state wouldn't keep them. So what? It was like 34,000 just in our area.
34,000 were fired. Doctors and nurses were fired by Kathy Hochul for not obeying the mandate on the jab. Yes.
And then you have the trades, and the trades have been suffering for generations anyway. There are more people retiring from the trades than there have been people going into the trades. It's not that you're just leaving the state. The actual trades like plumbing and HVAC and electricity, they're drying up because there's not a population that's going into these things. And you can make a lot of money that way. You can make a ton of money that way, as long as you're within the regulations, which New York State is heavily regulated when it comes to the trades because of the unions,
No.
mostly.
Most of the bluer states are. California has a lot of regulations on that. So does Illinois,
Yeah.
Washington State, Oregon. So yeah, Colorado. They have a lot of them.
But that section has been drying up on its own because there's just not enough people going into that. They, for whatever reason, that kind of blue collar skilled labor doesn't draw a big crowd, which is a shame.
Obama doesn't like them.
That, but I mean, it actually is good work. It's honest work, and it does benefit a ton of people, and it's critical for infrastructure. But we just don't see a lot of people getting into it.
Well,
so there's that.
Again, the leftist media doesn't promote it. They say it's beneath you. You've heard that from Biden. You've heard that from Obama. You've heard that from Kamala Harris from the left. They want you in services, not in skilled labor. They've been saying it for decades now.
Manufacturing is also skilled labor in a sense. I mean, it's not like it used to be where you sat in the line and you turn 2 screws and then pass it down the line to another guy that turns 2 more screws, and you eventually build this thing together in a plant. There's projects in manufacturing out there that do exist where you're working with, assembly of security boards, or circuitry boards, and manufacturing components, complex components. These are things that robots aren't doing for us. They're not automated yet. They're trying, but so far the attempts have been unsuccessful. You still need people to actually build some of these things. So these more complex products are being built by human beings. That's jobs for us. This is why bringing manufacturing back to the United States is actually so critical, because the manufacturing that we're talking about is not your mundane screw turning, 2-cent widget. That can be automated, and especially here in the United States, it can be automated. No, what manufacturing that most people are talking about is complex products that require a human hand, and those are the jobs that you want to see, and those are the jobs that you want people to have. So jobs that support infrastructure, like the trades, manufacturing jobs that create complex products, not just simple products, right? That could be automated. And then you have your technical fields. And we're losing a lot of our technical fields. I see listings every day for people, they want anywhere from 6 to 7 years experience for some software engineers and network administrators and all this other stuff, because there are plants that are automated that require technicians to service the machines. And we just don't have it here because the services are so hard to start up because of all the regulations. So our economy is going to suffer worse than many other places because we are overregulated as a state when it comes to industry and startups.
Sorry. No, I agree with you. Sorry. But I also just noticed that there's 26 just passed the House.
Really?
That's the No Rogue Rulings Act. And so I just saw that come out. So,
wait,
I was just looking.
Is that the one that's supposed to be rating in the judges?
I believe so. Yes.
I'll have to look more into that, because if they actually did something, that's amazing. I sighed solemnly because I figured that the Senate will probably kill it. But if it actually passes, and that's what it is, then congratulations, Congress. You've done one thing since the Steel administration started.
I don't think they should. I think it's bad because Congress is, again, just like they're trying to insert Congress into the powers of the presidency to say, oh, we can change the tariffs and decide whether or not tariffs can actually be applied or how long they can exist, which is all in the purview of the presidency. They want to give the Congress, again, Congress is now saying, oh, well, we get to decide what judges can and cannot make a ruling. I don't agree with that.
Isn't it, as long as they base it constitutionally on defining what good behavior is? I mean, in the Article 3 of the Constitution, it says that judges may sit on the panel, in the judgment seat for as long as they have certain criteria, and one of those criteria is good behavior. But nobody's really qualified or quantified what good behavior is, short of actual criminal happening.
Well, you can't quantify it. Here's an example. Amy Coney Barrett, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who is pretty easily defined as a conservative overall, just went against, there was a Supreme Court ruling saying that Donald Trump has the right to deport illegal aliens who are criminals, had no right and authorization to be in America, and he can deport them to El Salvador, where they can go to prison and their home countries can decide what they want to do with those people from that point. That's not our obligation in America. We have no obligation to these people, and the president has the right and the power to deport them, which is based in our laws. He's enforcing the law.
Right.
Amy Coney Barrett, recently in the recent ruling, was in dissent. Now, it did pass. The Supreme Court said, yes, Donald Trump absolutely has that power. That's obviously an option, a right of the executive branch. And so, yes, deport them all day long. Right. And Amy Coney Barrett said no. Now, there's a lot of people who are pissed off about Amy Coney Barrett. Matter of fact, there's a lot of headlines that she turned traitor. She's defying Donald Trump. She's not there for Donald Trump. Yes, he nominated her, but she owes him no allegiance. She's just because she's a justice and he got her into the Supreme Court and he nominated her. The moment she takes that seat, she owes him nothing and shouldn't.
It shouldn't, because this judiciary is supposed to remain impartial. They're supposed, they're only supposed to look at through that impartiality. They're only supposed to be erring on the side of the Constitution. So if it violates the Constitution, it's a no-go. That's long and the short of it.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. And that's her understanding, and so she voted against it. Mm-hmm. But depending on how you want to view it, and if this new bill, HR 1526, no rogue rulings, it could be seen as falling under that purview, a judge acting in a partisan manner. You can make that argument. I think it's a bad argument, but you could make that argument, and you could try and reverse her position or say that she is invalid because she's essentially not being partisan enough. Right. And the other side might say, well, she's being too partisan, whatever you want to say. You can argue either way, but it could invalidate them. I don't agree with that. I think Congress doesn't have the right to make that decision. These people are, when we vote for them, for the judges that we vote for, or the ones that are going up for nomination, that's our chance to make the decision. And if we've made bad decisions and we get a bunch of leftist activist judges, well, that was our fault. We picked them. Either when they go up for re-election, which depending on where you are in the country, could be somewhere between 6 to 10 years, you either vote them out of office, you impeach them when they break the law, and some of them do,
right?
Or you deal with it and get someone better in. But you don't go to Congress and go, I don't like that. I think that's a problem. I think that's bad. Other people may disagree with me, but I don't think that's good for America.
I'll have to read the bill because I wonder if it's just making it easier for grounds for impeachment, which even that's not real good, because Congress didn't Congress always have the ability to impeach federal judges?
Yeah, of course, it's part of the terms of impeachment. If you look in the impeachment, any
So,
federal employee, yeah,
so what's the purpose of making more legislation that would, unless they,
because politicians did something.
unless it bypasses entirely the criterion for impeachment and just goes straight to the conviction part. But why would you give that ability? Why would you give that ability to the House? That's usually the purview of the Senate. So that even then, you're violating the Constitution, because impeachment proceedings are supposed to be the House does the allegations and the discovery, and then it sends it over as a criminal referral to the Senate, and then the Senate actually looks through and says yay or nay on whether it's actually a proper criminal referral and they should be convicted, and then they send it to the DOJ for conviction. So even then, even then it would be unconstitutional. So I don't know. I'd have to look at the bill some more to actually see what it's about. But you're right; they shouldn't be usurping the different articles. There's a separation of powers for a reason. They shouldn't try to usurp each other.
Yeah, they're mixing up the separation of powers and grabbing powers that shouldn't be in Congress.
Yeah.
And they're trying to grab it from the executive branch. They're trying to grab it from the judicial branch. And they're saying it's because, well, we're going to protect everything. I'm sorry. They're separate for a reason. Even when we don't agree, even when the various branches get it wrong, I'm not saying they always get it right. Even when they're wrong, it doesn't matter. That's their power. Even when they're wrong, that's the power we elected them for. And we have to live with the consequence of making a bad decision. The answer isn't let's run to someone else to try and change that, because I guarantee you those same people will abuse that power for something else.
Yeah.
Inevitably. So let's not play that game. Let's not go down that road. Keep the power separate, because I don't trust Congress. I don't trust Congress.
They're probably utilizing this as a sort of, they probably sold it as this piece of legislation will act as a positive check against, overreaching judges. Maybe
yes, that is exactly what they said.
Maybe that's true, but then, that's how you're going to use it. Once you codify it, how is somebody else going to use it later on down the road if you actually lose your seat?
There's a big difference between what they say and what actually gets done. There's three different things in politics. There's what you say you're going to do. There's what's written down that you can do. And then there's the way that people actually interpret those words and do something completely different. The three different things. So it doesn't matter what they said, doesn't matter what they wrote. It's how they're effectively going to use it. How's it going to be used? It's going to be used to take away power from judges and to corral them into making partisan decisions. That's not what the judge is there for.
No.
If there's too many activist judges, vote them out of office or impeach them or live with it, because we shouldn't have had them in the first place. And there are too many activist judges, and I don't like those activist judges. Whether they're left or right doesn't matter. But we made a poor decision by letting them get there in the first place. We have to go through the right process to fix that, not suddenly jump in and say, okay, we're going to strip some of their power. No, you don't get to do that. That's
once you start, yeah, it is counterproductive. And once you start actually blending the different articles of the Constitution, you basically have dismantled the document. There is no Constitution anymore. And I believe it was Trump that said, what was it, the second year that Biden was president, that the way things were going as far as how Congress was abdicating a lot of their responsibilities to the executive branch because their guy was in power, right? So they were giving him the Obama levels of deregulation and the ability to do pretty much anything they wanted, so they could just fart around and go get banged in the Senate chambers. They do all this, and then now all of a sudden it's like, no, wait. We actually will do something, so we're going to try and take all this power back. But we can't take it from the executive branch because we already gave it to them. So we're going to take it from the judicial branch. When you muddle everything up like that, you've already destroyed the document. And that was something that Trump was alluding to when he was talking about unfair elections or unverifiable elections, rather, when he was talking about how, we have all these questionable chains of custody when it comes to mail-in votes and all this other stuff. If you can't secure the vote, then you can't effectively and faithfully execute the dictates of the Constitution, because you've already undermined the entire primary tool that's used to execute the document. We do it all by vote. So if you're gonna screw with the way things are voted for or not voted for, then you've already undermined the document. Well, swapping powers between different branches that are supposed to remain separate does the same exact thing. It waters down the Constitution to the point where it's just a piece of paper with some writing on it about high ideals. There is no enforcing it because nobody knows where the line is. There is no line. The boundaries have been eliminated, and now it's just cats and dogs living together, rain falling upwards and all sorts of crazy stuff happens.
That is a horrible Ghostbusters quote. You butchered it. You
I
butchered the Ghostbusters quote.
I killed it.
Peter Venkman would not be pleased.
I'll have to watch the movie again and get it right next time.
Well, yeah, just make sure you don't watch Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh, God,
you will not be happy.
They couldn't give it away. They tried.
No, they did, yes. Literally, they did try and give it away. They had a deal.
They had a deal.
No one took it.
No one took it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Was there anything in like the Second Amendment arena that recently changed that I missed?
The only things that have been happening in the Second Amendment area is the retraction of the Biden zero tolerance policy for clerical errors when it comes to the 4473. So if you forget to dot an I or a comma or something like that, or if the word's misspelled, they're not going to sit there and hold it against you, right? So that was
common sense. It's common sense. Like,
yeah,
you didn't dot the I in a small I in a page full of documents. For people who don't know, there used to be, to get a firearm, you have to fill out the forms, and under the Biden administration, if you misspelled a single word, if you forgot to dot an I on a single word, if you didn't have the proper punctuation, you forgot like one comma, they would have the right to throw out the entire document, keep all the money you've paid in fees to get to that point. So you had the applications, the fingerprints, all that money, you don't get a refund. They throw out the document and tell you start over from the beginning. And in some states like New York, California, many of the bluer than blue states, that process costs about $600, $700, $800 per application that you cannot get refunded. And the process can take I know many people, it takes 6 months, a year, 18 months to go through that process. And Biden was like, well, I got to dot the I once, throw it out, do it over. That's punishment. That's punishment for exercising the Second Amendment. So go ahead.
The other thing that's been happening that actually is local with us here in New York is that Kathy Hochul has decided that she's going to require credit card companies to basically report ammunition sales when their cards are used.
I saw that with Colion Noor was speaking about it today out of Dallas, talking about New York. This is so wrong.
Yeah. And it's been tried before. It was actually attempted on a national scale, I want to say probably 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
2018.
2018. And it didn't work out then. And I don't expect it to work out now, or at least be enforced. It'll probably be put on the books, but I doubt it will be enforced. Unless, they find enough dissidents buying ammo that they're going to, knock on their door like Dexter Taylor. So what does that mean for the
Yeah.
rest of us? Well, that means that we're going to have to start using burner cards or making cash-only purchases. That's people will find a way. People will find a way, and this it doesn't mean that we here at the Liberty First Foundation do not promote people breaking the law. However, do remember that part of being a constitutionalist is that if it's unconstitutional, security, the SCOTUS has already ruled that if a law is unconstitutional, you may continue to enjoy not following that law. You'll just have to make sure you fight it in court. FBC, I think, and GOA have decided that they're going to make if it passes, they've already got their lawsuits ready for this.
FBC?
Yeah, the Firearms Policy Center or Firearms Policy Coalition. They've been at the forefront of using a lot of doing a lot of these cases against New York because of Hochul's shenanigans.
Yeah, you were using the acronym. Most people don't know it.
Yeah, the Firearms Policy Coalition, best known for swearing at people and the lawsuit printer going burp. That's them. And they have been very effective in terms of taking things to court and fighting a lot of these court battles. But it's one of the things that Mike Marshall and Frank have often stated on this channel. It's all the government has to do is change one word, and then that law still exists in another form, and you have to take it back to court and fight it again because of a word change or a phrase change or a change in a sentence or a paragraph. It's a never-ending loop. The only way that you can get things like this to stop so that we can actually exercise our rights freely is to make sure that we, the people, go to the ballot box and get these people out of here. So John Lasham says, okay, if there was a way to get a list of Hochul's last 100 executive orders, I can't imagine anyone, not even a Democrat, agreeing with anything that she has done. How or why does she still get positive press? Well, because they get money for giving her positive press. I mean, that's honestly the best thing that she's able to do. If there is public dollars anywhere, Hochul has proven time and again that she will find a way to funnel that into her administration, and through her administration, her friends get paid. She did it with NIAID. She did it with NIAID.
Yeah, but we have to be more exact there. It's what Kathy Hochul does. You can go to every one of her announcements as governor. And she always, whenever she's looking at, oh, we're going to fix this problem, that problem, whatever her solution is, there's always a study, there's always a review, there's always a program that's being created. And that program is almost always filled with donors for Democrats, especially donors for Kathy Hochul, but donors for Democrats that are filling a lot of those seats. And that's the process she goes through. So when John is asking, well, why are people following this? No one, the news media doesn't report all of her executive orders, a lot of her actions. They only put out the ones that they think will make her look good. They also ignore the fact that all she does is spread money around. She throws money at, same thing as what we saw with Obama and Biden and Harris. They throw money at problems. Democrats throw money at problems, and she does too. And so they don't say it as, oh, she's throwing money at this, and it's money that's going directly to her donors. They say, she's addressing this problem. It's not really realistic. But that's the problem with Hochul, and that's why people don't notice it.
Yeah. There's another thing that she's been looking for is that she's looking to add legislation that's going to require gun owners to also carry civil liability insurance. Well,
oh God, that's horrible.
The insurance companies have already said they're not going to do it. They said they said that if this legislation passes, not one of them is willing to insure a gun owner for civil liability in the case of it being used for any kind of defense or whatever.
The
So-
litigation would be so high
Yeah.
if they make it required, because that's like saying that I'm just trying to think of something. Every steak knife companies that make steel, companies and dinnerware, kitchenware companies would suddenly have to have insurance policies for every kitchen knife, whether it's a butcher's knife or a steak knife or any other kind of knife. You'd have to have an insurance policy because people have used knives to kill other human beings for the history of mankind since we first figured out how to make a knife. So they would have to, and they could never, you can never, the amount of money that would instantly, because there are some cases that would be justifiable. The person was a criminal. They did, in fact, commit a crime. I mean, there was in Texas, young kids, high schoolers. One high schooler turned around and just stabbed another one in the chest because the guy grabbed him because they didn't like where he was sitting. It's pretty straightforward. It's an overreach. It's not self-defense. It was absolutely a murder, and it was using a knife. Should there be a lawsuit? Should there be a lawsuit on that? And should insurance companies pay out on that?
Right.
And now imagine guns doing the same thing. It's ridiculous.
Well, the other part of that, I think the reason she's pushing for that is because right now, gun liability insurance in the state of New York is all but illegal to purchase. I think I don't know how many companies actually offer it, but there are regulations against it in New York State. So if she makes a law requiring it without repealing or carving out by that new legislation an easement on purchasing gun liability insurance, nobody can comply. So they're immediately breaking the law, which means that she has the justification for going in and relieving you of your property, leading to an entire disarmament of a whole law, what would be a normally law-abiding demographic of the population.
It's a negative loophole. If you obey her law and get the insurance, well, that insurance by law is also illegal. Therefore, she can go and send the police. Now we have a list, along with the list of people who bought ammunition.
Right.
They can now go down that list of people who have ammunition, look down that same from that list, and look at the list of people who have insurance. And they just have to cross check the two lists. And if your name shows up on both, I have insurance and I bought ammo, or I bought ammo there, and then I have insurance. And whether you do or do not have insurance, you've broken the law in both cases.
Correct.
Do you have insurance, which breaks the law, or you don't have insurance, and that breaks the law? So now that they have you, and that's the trick. Just look on the list. Whether you have it or don't, because both laws exist at the same time, you are a criminal, and New York State now has the right to take away your guns. That's why so many people in the Second Amendment community are upset. It's a trap. No matter what you do, if you do anything at all, you have violated a law, and therefore they get the right to punish you, because there is no way to not break the law. You can't not break the law. It's set up as a loop. You're trapped.
Right. And then essentially, basically, you get to exercise your right at the pleasure of the government, because it's up to them whether they enforce it or not. So,
which means it's not a right.
Right. They may let you have your rifles for recreational or shooting, like recreational shooting, or hunting or whatever, which they may for a time. But if one of the things about this credit card bill, which passed, by the way, she signed it into law.
Mm-hmm.
So if if they see you purchasing large, they say it's to prevent stockpiling of ammunition, because they're gonna automatically flag that as you are doing something subversive or dangerous. So if they do this, then yeah, they're going to double check the lists, and they're going to go down through, and they're going to be like criminal, 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 and they'll be able to seize your arms, your ammunition, and then you're bereft of everything. Plus, you've got jail time, which in the state of New York, because you're not a violent activist, you're not going to be back out on the street. They're going to throw you in prison in Rikers for throw away the key. They're trying to do it to Dexter Taylor, and all he was doing was a hobby.
Well, they did do it to him because he's got 10 years.
Right.
And that was, again, for a hobby, not breaking any law, breaking the impression of the law, but not the law.
Right.
And again, it's that catch-22. You can't, once you're in that loop, you can't get out.
Right.
I find this to be really bad. Go ahead.
The last thing that she did is she signed in a penalty for using pistol converters, which are the modification devices that you can use to attach to semi-automatic pistols. So that's part of that whole Glock switch craze that's been going on. And it basically is you have a device that you place on a semi-automatic pistol, and it doesn't alter the device in any way other than adding the part, but it does change the operation of the item so that it goes from semi-automatic to fully automatic. And so you can
does it become a bazooka? Are you firing rockets? Like, is it like Warhammer 40K and suddenly I'm firing mini rockets at people?
You don't get a bolter. No, what it is basically you can now empty mags faster, because what it does is it bypasses the semi-automatic function of the trigger, and it allows you to switch it to full auto. And
yeah, but so what? I've seen videos of people. Yeah, because I've seen, I don't know how many videos. It's all over. You can find them on YouTube, on Rumble, of professional and semi-professional people, and even people who I saw a video from an Indiana police officer with a woman who had never been trained in using a firearm ever in her life, with a semi-automatic. It was I believe, a 9-round magazine. A Glock might have been 15 rounds, but I believe it was 9. And first time she's picked up the gun, they basic training on, okay, this is how you hold it, this is how you point, this is where safety is, that's it. Police officers, this is their state police on a gun range. And she was able to empty the magazine in about 1.5, 1.2 seconds. Empty, fire, empty, reload, 1.2 seconds. So what? You made it, they're making it a little faster, so it's now half a second. Who cares?
Yeah.
Realistic.
No, it's a piece of legislation that actually helps set her up for stopping people from manufacturing their own gun parts. That's really what it is. They've already talked about legislation up here and I think it's also a national discussion, is that they're talking about people that use 3D printers to manufacture various parts for firearms. Well, this is just her way of reaching out just a little bit further, and it's not just the 3D printers now. Anybody that's a machinist that works with metal will now be suspect of making these illegal pistol converters and, arming the citizenry against the government. The way they're treating this is basically that she's preparing herself for the pitchforks and torches, because that's what she sees.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense.
She wants to see it.
She's stupid. I mean, there's a thing called a potato gun, right?
Yeah.
People have been, since guns were made, people have been able to make a gun without having any real deep. You don't need deep technical knowledge to be able to make a gun, and people have been doing it forever. But here's the thing that gets me. They keep trying to say, "Well, you added this part to a handgun,
right,
or to a rifle, so now it's a machine gun."
Yeah,
which makes no sense whatsoever. because I can change the wheels on your Toyota. It's not going to become a Ferrari. It's
Right.
not going to perform like a Lamborghini. It's just not going to happen. I can give it a new paint job. It's not going to go faster unless you're an orc. You can paint it red. It's
And
not
then
going to go faster.
There's a
Yes, I've heard.
There's a Warhammer joke that my son told me. I have to get him to tell me again because I think you would love it.
Yeah,
It's
if
something
it's about orcs,
it's about orcs and it's about being a tank. And I gotta get the joke again because I
okay,
think
that one I don't know.
fascinating.
That one I don't know. And by the way, folks, if you don't understand what I'm saying about paint it red, it goes faster. It's an orc. It's a Warhammer 40K. It's a joke. So look it up. You'll see it. It's funny. But here's the thing. So let's go and assume that Kathy Hochul, she's an orc. Democrats are orcs, and because they all believe that this piece that you can make on your own and add it to a firearm will suddenly make every handgun, every rifle suddenly into a machine gun. Let's assume that that's true. Good. Do you know how many machine guns have been used for crimes since 1932? 4. There are 732,000 machine guns in America at this moment. There are 16,000 machine gun owners in New York State alone, 43,000 in New Jersey alone. Almost every state has at least 10,000 people owning machine guns. According to the ATF, according to the federal government, almost every state, I think Wyoming or one of the Dakotas might have a little bit less than 10,000. That's because there's like no people there. But otherwise, every state, well, it's true, they have almost no people, but every other state has at least 10,000 people with machine guns. Let's call them machine guns. It means we'll be even safer because nobody uses a machine gun to harm anyone. It's not a problem. Machine guns aren't a problem. They just want you to think movie, danger, danger, danger. But if we're using their logic and we just made machine gun, then we should be safer than ever before because no one uses machine guns for anything.
Yeah. No, the only thing you could possibly use a machine gun for is for the original purpose of the Second Amendment, which is to prevent a tyrannical government from oppressing you.
No, you can use it for a lot of things. It's just that people don't.
Right. It's fun to shoot. They're fun to shoot.
Most people don't know. Well, most people don't know. You can own a machine gun.
Yeah.
Biden and Obama and Democrats have lied to people and said, you can't own a tank. Yes, you can. They've lied to people and said, you can't own an F-15. Yes, you can. They lie to people and say, you can't own a flamethrower or a machine gun. Yes, you can. And people do. All of the above. People can own mine layers, and they do. They can own RPGs and bazookas, and they do. So to say you can't is a lie, and people already do own them. And they, as I said, over 734,000 machine guns are owned at this moment, actually more than. The data I'm quoting is from 2020 by the ATF. I didn't see the latest numbers.
Yeah.
We know there's at least that many people with machine guns in America. It's not a problem. But the Democrats never say, oh, you're going to turn that into a machine gun and it's going to be deadly. No one else with machine guns deadly. There's only been 4 cases in 6 decades. Should you want everyone to turn it into a machine gun? Means statistically you'll be safer. Oh, they don't want to talk about that. No. That's how illogical this is. That they're trying to say, oh, it's going to be so much deadlier, but yet the actual deadly implement they're talking about is one of the safest things in the entire country.
Yeah, and it's just another way to set up power and control from a centralized government. I mean, they already have something in place that's a loop, like we were talking about earlier with the credit cards and the civil liability insurance, right? So when they first were doing recreational marijuana legalization, one of the senators from Western New York came out and said, "Hey, there's a problem with this legislation," and he was fighting for it in the Senate to basically either get it rewritten so that it didn't have this problem, this loop, the crime loop, or to get it thrown out entirely. And when they said no, we're going ahead with it, he tried to spread the message. They legalized marijuana from state-run dispensaries. Now, in order to buy from a state-run dispensary, you have to produce an ID. That ID now is on a state registry that they then compare with the firearms registry that they have when you go for
They take away your right to own a gun. If you're just using or selling approved drugs, marijuana, if you are officially using or dispensing, selling state-sponsored marijuana, they take away your license because you have been mentally impaired.
Right. And not only that, you have what's called a Schedule 1 narcotic. You have possession of a Schedule 1 narcotic. So you also have drug charges put against you, and as a felony, you lose your firearms. Now, I haven't heard of it being enforced at all.
Oh, it has been.
But I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting on it. I'm sure it has been, but I haven't seen the reporting on it. But there was a loophole, and that was almost 6 years ago. I think it was about 6 years ago. So this coupled with the ban on bulletproof vests, on a defensive, on a purely defensive, passive system, and then this civil liability business and tracking of ammo sales, it's very apparent that governments like New York are trying to completely subvert the Second Amendment, and they don't care how many Bruins SCOTUS passes. They're going to do it. So it's up to us. Right. It's up to us. They've been doing it,
and but it's since 2019. I know I've covered it before. In 2019, we know that the NICS reporting had shown the change from New York State because of the use of illicit drugs, mentally impairing drugs, and the way they take away the firearms. They don't usually include the federal Schedule 1 license. They don't do that because if they did that, they set a precedence. That means everyone who has a license to sell marijuana in New York State would have to be arrested on that same basis because they're breaking federal law. So they don't do that. Instead, they say you're mentally impaired because it is a narcotic. It's a psychoactive drug. So they say you're mentally impaired, you're incapable. Same thing as if you're depressed,
right,
even temporarily depressed, and are receive a prescription from your doctor to take depression medications. Well, that again is a psychoactive drug. As soon as the state sees that, you no longer qualify as being able to own a gun in New York State. They put you on the NICS database that denies you the ability to buy guns or ammo thereafter. That's how they do it. They've been doing it since 2019. The list does exist. It's not talked about by the mainstream news media. It is a growing list. It's been happening for a long time. So I am aware of it.
And what you were saying about, what was it? I just lost it. You reminded me about when you were talking about
pharmaceuticals.
The pharmaceuticals. No, it was about. Crap! I lost it. It was a good point too. I'll remember it next week. It'll be fine. Boy, that's gonna bug me now because it was a good point to tie in with all this. Anyway, we've been on nearly 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I was about to mention it. Yeah.
Yep. So I think we should go ahead, and I don't know that Frank's going to be able to make it back. So I hope all is well with Frank. And Mike Marshall is currently out and working. So we hope that he makes it home safe as well. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for chatting with us this evening and hearing our positions on the Constitution and all the unconstitutional business of our current representatives. And hope that if you have any thoughts or comments, that you go ahead and post them after the video. Please like, subscribe, and clip this. Send it to your friends if you find something valuable. If you don't agree with something, go ahead and spread it around anyway. And, you can call us a bunch of monkeys, or you can just agree with us and try and help spread the message and boost the signal. From all of us here at Liberty First Foundation, we thank you for joining us every Wednesday at 8 o'clock while we discuss things through a constitutional lens on current events. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.